Okay. So yesterday, I want to make sure because this is weird for me too. But yesterday in the lecture, I told you what our classes would look like, that I don't do Zoom, why I don't do Zoom. Did I do all that? Okay. Um, so I think we were just getting ready to look at the top of page 23, our religious and art movement, which is obviously not going to take us the whole class period. We're going to flip through that PowerPoint really quickly just to see if there's anything extra that we needed to look at. The top of page 23, we're still going to talk a little bit about religious reform. And what we're looking at that religious reform are two different types of religion that are going to be established during this time period as a result of both the Protestant Reformation, this idea of deism and thinking and using your head. Now we're going to swing. Remember, I told you religion is a pendulum, and when it works perfect, it's sitting in the middle and just kind of oscillating back and forth. But we're going to have these wide swings. And deism kind of took us to this wide swing, like think about God with your head. Methodism and pietism is going to move it to a heart, where in that feeling, that church setting, it shouldn't be this academic thing in your head that of trying to prove there's a God and an existence of a God. It should be in your heart, a feeling that of joy, a feeling of the wonder of God. And that's what those two things. The first one will be in Germany. So this will be, again, two different types of the same religion, but in different places. So on page 23, G2, Pietism in Germany caused its Protestant revival. And this is, again, emotional. This emotional content of Christian faith was emphasized. Prayer, worship, preaching, and this idea of joy, that when you went to church, there should be some kind of feeling, and see reborn Christians expected to lead society. And again, this is the idea of rebirth. This will be the beginnings of some of those terms like reborn, things that are that term is not found in all of the religions prior to that, right? Catholics don't do this reborn thing. Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Lutherans, none of them have this idea that you have to be rebaptized or reborn in the faith. Methodists will be founded by John Wesley, and I would put a really big box around this Methodism because College Board likes this Methodism kind of thing. John Wesley, concerned about the complacency of religion, also a skeptic of enlightenment and deism. We're still not at enlightenment. That's our next chapter, but we've talked about deism. And he preached in fields, right? He says, and this will be what he says, you don't need a church. You don't need a physical building. You can preach the word of God anywhere. And he is going to really appeal to the lower classes. He rejects predestination. He believes that all men and women who earnestly seek salvation shall be saved. And most importantly, D, his message was one of joy and hope, free will, and universal salvation. Anybody who believes can achieve salvation. There's no requirements that you need to do. And Methodism is going to develop into a whole denomination. Now, I think the reason the College Board likes this is because Methodism isn't really going to take off in Europe, but it's going to explode in the United States, explode into this new denomination called Methodism. So, all right. Now I am going to I gotta put my glasses on and find my art PowerPoint, but I'm not sure where it's at. So here's what I'm going to do instead. We will just never mind. We'll do it on the bottom of page 23, we have a new art movement called Rococo. It's one of my favorites. If you've seen the movie Frozen, and you look down at the little picture there of the girl in the swing where she jumps in the picture, that's Rococo. That's what I'm saying as I'm watching it. Oh, it's Rococo art. Rococo art is fanciful, pink, blue, light, airy. And if you actually look at the painting, you'll see somebody's trying to look up her pants of her skirt, trying to actually look up her skirt. Rococo is a mid-18th century. This is not on our art project. We'll save this one to our next one. Identified with the court of Louis XV. Lighter elements, curves, natural light, highly decorative, more intimate setting. And this, again, is where you know that it's Rococo, 1E. Focused on playful scenes of the aristocracy and the bourgeoisie. This is just showing them at play and parties and swinging on swings, and it's pink and it's light and it's fluffy. And that's what I think of Rococo. It's not serious art. It's art that's meant to be decorative. It's not art that's meant to have a deeper meaning or to show any reflection of history. It's just fun art, Rococo. On the last little bit on page 24 is neoclassicism. The term neo, that means new. So when you see that new in front of it, new neoclassic. Okay, so what you'll get confused with this new classic art is Renaissance. That's what's going to be the confusing, because that's what they're renewing. They are renewing the Renaissance. What will be different and how you can tell the difference between neoclassic and Renaissance is depth. There is no depth in neoclassic. It's flat portraits. It's flat paintings. There is no depth. So it's in your notes behind the Napoleon on the horse, but it's also on the bulletin board behind Kimberly's head. So you can see that neoclassic. It's the jewel tones, classic symbols, but there is no depth. So it, again, seeks to return to the artistic style of ancient Rome, balance, symmetry, restraint, but no depth. Okay, so this will be the one that you get confused about. Jacques Louis David is our most important artist of that moment. And then neoclassical architecture. And again, Washington, D.C. is full of neoclassical art. There's a brand, the Arc de Triomphe and all that. Okay, and then we'll have music. Classical, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven become the masters of neoclassical, and they move away from Baroque, which is Bach and Handel. And again, those will be, you need to make sure that you know that Bach and Handel are Baroque, and that Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven are the new classicals. Okay? All right, I'm going to pull out this PowerPoint and just kind of make sure that we've gone through everything in that. Not going to spend a lot of time looking at each individual slide, but I want to make sure that there's a couple of things that you're pointing out that you know. And on that very first one, chapter 15, the old regime, again, that old regime is everything that happens before the French Revolution. So I'm on the PowerPoint, that very first chapter 15, the second slide. Make sure that you know a little bit of those characteristics. Elites, established churches, labor forces and guilds, peasantry, high taxes, feudal dues, tradition, little concept of individual rights, group rights only. The peasants and serfs, we looked at that. We looked at the game laws that, now I'm on page 3, that it's a capital crime to hunt on the land. We looked at family structure, flipping the page. I think we spent a lot of time on page 4 and 5. We looked at the agricultural revolution and all those innovations. Make sure that you look at, again, enclosure property. On page 6 and 7 of that PowerPoint, we looked at the population increases, that industrial revolution, consumer goods. why it began in Great Britain, textiles, steam engine, that's Mr. Watt. Let's see. All right, let's look on page 9. That's the part where we haven't really talked about urban riots. So on page 9, we have the urban classes. So we've talked a lot about peasants. We talked a lot about what happened to peasants during the enclosure. We haven't talked a lot about the urban poor. So that's poor people that live in large cities. So I got to have my glasses for these because it's so small. So the urban rich is segregated from the poor. They're segregated by zones in the cities. They don't live close by each other. So we have an upper class. And again, this is the urban areas: nobles, large merchants, bankers, financiers, clergy. Then we have the middle class: merchants, trade people, banker, professionals. And then our artisans are the grocers, butchers, fishmongers, which is one of my favorite words, carpenters, cabinet makers, smiths, printers. This is the largest group in any city. Then we have the working poor. Those are people that work for the grocers, the butchers, the fishmongers. They don't have a guaranteed salary. They don't have guaranteed jobs. That they're called the working poor, and every day is a quest to find a job, to make money, to find food to eat. And some of these things that are going to happen are these food riots or bread riots. And again, these riots will come as a debate over the price of bread. And that's one of the ways that the government could maintain control over the bread, was to raise the prices so that the poor couldn't buy it and save it for the wealthy. We haven't really talked that much about the Jewish population. Most of the Jews are going to be living in Eastern Europe at this time period, mostly because, and I'm on page 9 at the very last slide, the Jewish population. Most of them are going to live in Eastern Europe because they cannot live anywhere else. They are regarded as a non-resident alien. They do not have citizenship, and that's one of the things that makes it difficult to be a Jew in Europe. They are not citizens of any country. And in that case, they can be kicked out of countries, they can be removed from countries, they can be persecuted in countries. And that is why after World War II, it became a driving force of the Allies to create a country of Israel for Jews to have that citizenship. So they live in separate communities called ghettos, and most of these ghettos are separated from the rest of the town by a wall. Most Jews had curfews that they had to be behind their city wall by sundown. If they weren't, they could be prosecuted. Most definitely, they probably would have had some kind of violence premeditated toward them. But again, the life of Jews in Eastern Europe is still difficult. They're persecuted. Things aren't easy. Chapter 16, that's our transatlantic economy, which every time you see that word, you should think slavery, our trade wars and colonial rebellion. And I think we spent quite a bit of time making sure that we understood what this is. At the bottom of page 1, the source of European world domination. That is always a hard question for students to answer, because there will be lots of questions in this chapter and in future chapters where the answer is white Europeans felt superior. And your little pen will not want to circle that answer. But European world domination. At this point, Europe is dominating the world. Why? Most, again, technology and other stuff, but a lot of it is that cultural superiority, that feeling that their culture is superior, so they have the right to cast their colonies and their domain over all these other cultures and minimize, and actually in some cases stop people from practicing their culture. Please make sure, again, you look at these mercantile empires, mercantilist goals, the French and British rivalry, And let's see what else. Again, on page 4, slavery and the transatlantic economy. That transatlantic economy is built on this triangular trade and the movement of slaves, especially with the British and the Dutch. We got all our wars laid out: War of Austrian Succession, Jenkins' Ear, 7 Years' War, American Revolution, and on page 7, a little bit about the American Revolution. Okay? So that takes us to the end of this chapter. So really quickly, what Thursday and Friday are going to look like. Thursday was supposed to be our test day, and that all your assignments are due. Obviously, you two will not be here. So your test will be on Friday, and all your assignments due on Friday. All of you listening at home, your test is on. I'm looking at them like I'm looking at them. Your test is on Thursday, and all your assignments are due on Thursday. Wednesday will be quizzes. So we'll have our terms quiz and our chapter 15 and 16 quizzes. So make sure you take those quizzes, and that finishes us up. I am not going to send you guys into next week. I will send you guys into next week with notes. So Friday, you guys will pick up your notes and your assignments. Thursday, people, you'll have your stuff on Thursday. Okay? And then our 2 virtual days, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'll let you know. I'll let you know how far we're going to proceed, what we're going to do, any of that. Okay? All right, questions? But I do want you guys to have that stuff just in case anything yucky happens. So, all right, questions, anybody? Okay. Bye, people at home.